Welcome to Politics and Prose. My name is Mishi. Please silence your cell phones, and when we get to the Q&A, you can line up at the microphone by the pillar. Tonight is for anyone who's ever thought, I have a story. Now what? We're here to celebrate Alia Hanna Habib's new book, Take It From Me, an agent's guide to building a nonfiction writing career from scratch, which is a refreshingly honest, practical roadmap to the publishing world. Alia is a vice president and literary agent at the Gernert Company, representing Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists, MacArthur Fellows, and best-selling authors. But she also remembers what it's like to be on the outside looking in. This book pulls back the curtain from shaping an idea to writing a proposal to finding an agent, and replaces mystery with clarity, samples, templates, and real talk. She'll be in conversation with Nicole Chung, author of the acclaimed memoir, A Living Remedy, and the national bestseller, All You Can Ever Know. You may also know her work from the New York Times, the Washington Post, and beyond. Together, they'll talk about writing, publishing, and persistence, and what it actually takes to build a nonfiction career from scratch. So please join me in welcoming Alia Hanna Habib and Nicole Chung.
That I was so late, and on my way on my incredibly circuitous cab ride here where I got very lost, I was thinking about how it relates to the inspiration for this book. And in my job as an agent, I work with a lot of really smart and accomplished people, some of whom are in the audience and here, including Josh Levine, who once helped me when I got lost in Washington, D.C. the last time I was here. I get lost every time. And I'm gonna hold this down because I'm echoing. And what I think about my job as an agent working with these smart and accomplished people is so often their expertise doesn't translate to figuring out the basics of book publishing. And they find that hard. It's hard, especially if you're a person who hangs out in bookstores and self-identifies as a smart person. If you're like, oh, I don't understand intuitively how a book proposal works, or I don't understand intuitively how a book contract should look or what a payout should be. And one of the things I wanted to say is there's nothing intuitive about any of those things. It took me years to learn those things. And a lot of the things that we think about as what make us smart are things you just have to learn and try and practice. So that's my way of forgiving myself for never, ever, ever understanding the difference between Massachusetts Avenue and Connecticut Avenue. They're the same place to me as far as I'm concerned. And hopefully you'll forgive me. And I hope that my expertise in books hasn't been undermined by being so late, and I thank you for waiting. Is this too echoey? Should I? Okay. So I'm just gonna do the shortest reading. When you read my book, you'll see that I don't believe in long readings at book events. I think it should be mostly conversations, so you get to know about the author and the book beyond what you can get from the book. But I did want to get you a feel for the book and for how I went about thinking about it. So this is from the part of the book called The Submission Process, or This Is Where It Hurts. When I was little, I hated having my blood drawn. Nurse after exasperated nurse tried to reassure me that it didn't hurt and I would be just fine, which is an easy thing to say when you are the one holding the needle. The standard advice was to close my eyes and it'd be over in a second. I inevitably howled. Of course, it wasn't the pain that hurt, but the anticipation of it. As a budding hypochondriac, one of the reasons I spent my childhood getting a lot of blood drawn, my worry was that a routine medical test would reveal all the things that were wrong with me, and one of those things was assuredly imminent death. I eventually met my morbid match when I got a phlebotomist who gave it to me straight. First, she told me she loved drawing blood. I couldn't believe someone would find an act I found so unpleasant, delightful, but her delight in blood and needles was the good kind of infectious. Second, she narrated every part of the procedure. Now I am making a tourniquet. This helps me find a vein. Now I have found a vein. Looks like you have a good one. Now take a deep breath. This is where it hurts. At the end, she gave me the requisite sticker and asked if I'd like to see the vial of my own blood. When I said yes, she brandished the vial with glee. Seeing my own blood in a plastic tube suddenly made the procedure seem both miraculous and reassuringly routine. I didn't get over my dislike of having my blood drawn, but having the process handled by someone who enjoyed it, who appreciated its awe and saw the importance of its mechanisms, made my fare manageable. You see where I am going here. The submission process is extremely unpleasant for authors, and this is not an irrational response. To extend my metaphor, you are sending a sample of one of the most intimate parts of yourself out into the world for evaluation and diagnosis. You don't know what the result might be, but when you really want to sell a book, learning no one wants to publish that book can feel like a fate nearly as catastrophic as imminent death. Of course, you are terrified. I am, on the other hand, I'm a bit like the sanguineous phlebotomist.
Okay, this is on. Alia, it's so nice to meet you in
nice to meet you
person.
too.
Finally, you and I talked on the phone once years ago. I don't know if you'd remember.
Remind me.
Oh, it's okay. It was, well, I didn't intend to start off by talking about this. Sorry, but it was my first agent left publishing. And I was looking for a new agent, and someone recommended we chat. And
Oh
so
my gosh.
it was a lovely conversation.
I hope I was really nice.
You were very nice. No, I appreciate your reading so much. I feel like the first time I went out on submission myself, I was helped by the fact I was so ignorant about the process. Like, you just don't know what to expect when you're there. And now I know
Did you
it's
find
torture.
it terrifying?
It was, yes. But like, I would have been more scared if I had really understood like that it would go on for weeks. There would be like not necessarily be a clear resolution. No, but I really appreciate your book. I think it is. I thought it was so helpful. Like, I learned a lot, and I'm
very glad to hear
I'm
that.
not
Thank you.
No, I think it's going to be good for writers regardless of what stage in pitching or what stage in their careers they're at. I know, like, I'm not that new to this, and I learned a lot from your book. I wonder if you could start just by telling us, like, for those in the audience who aren't aware, like, how you got into this wild business.
The beginning of my agenting years were so challenging and hard that I think that's perhaps why I don't always remember who I talked to, because it's like I think I blacked a lot of it out. I had a really unusual path. So the typical path is you become an agent by being an assistant to an older agent. You start out that if you're in the know, you say on the desk. You're on the desk of such and such agent. And they train you, they mentor you, and eventually you start taking on their castaway projects or referrals. I didn't take that path. I started out as a book publicist. I started out as a publicity assistant, and that's at a different point in the publishing process. The publicist comes at the end of the publishing process. And why was that my job? It was the first job I got out of college when I started applying for jobs as a very clueless young person and a very broke young person, was in the publicity department of a publisher. And I came from a very working class family, and I had to take the first job I could get. I didn't really have the luxury to really research publishing. I couldn't afford to take a fancy publishing course, which is the way a lot of people break in. I didn't have any connections. I had no one to sit me down and explain, this is what a publicist does. This is what an editor does. This is what an agent does. I just took a job and had to start paying rent. And then I was a publicist for a while. I went to grad school. I came back. I got a more senior job as a publicist. And I was in my early 30s as a publicist. I was pretty senior. And I knew I didn't want to do it forever. I knew that wouldn't be a career that I found satisfying, because when you're a publicist, like I said, you come in at the end, you're assigned books to work on. You don't have a ton of control over what you work on. You're given, oh, here's the 30 books we're publishing this season. Pick 10 that you're into, and maybe you could work on them. And I wanted to be a part of picking the books that people read. And I wanted to be a part of shaping those books. So I thought I should be an editor. At that point, I knew what an editor was. So I went to the head of the imprint where I was working, and he said I was too old.
No.
Oh, yeah. I didn't put that explicitly in the book. That's why you come to the Q&A. You get the hot goss. I won't say his name, but I really enjoyed once I became an agent, and he was many times the underbidder on many of my books. So yeah, he said I was too old. And he was like, yeah, it's too late to make the transition, but you can become like a senior director of publicity. That's your path. And I didn't love that answer. It was, what was I going to do? I ended up having lunch with this really amazing agent, Julie Bauer, who's been a fairy godmother to so many of us. And I was a publicist on one of her books. I did a good job. She took me out to lunch and she said, well, what do you want to like do with your life? And I was like, I don't want to be a publicist forever. She said, you should look into being an agent. And essentially what I did was I skipped the whole assistant part. I just got a job with at a desk at an agency as a commission only, had no real money coming in agent, and was a publicist on the side for about 5 or 6 years to like pay the bills. But I had to learn everything from scratch. No one was there to teach me except my boss, sort of, but I wasn't an assistant. And that process was really humbling. But it made me really aware of everything that we assume people know about the process. Because there were things that I'd worked in publishing at that point for 10 or 12 years, and there was so much just basic shit about agenting that I didn't know, because even though I was a pretty senior publicist, no one had ever told me what agents do. Even in my own industry, we're so siloed. And that's really where my interest in transparency came from.
Let's just like get right into it, because you spend a lot of this book, I mean, you cover like a lot of ground, obviously, but a lot of it seems to be aimed at like demystifying what to many people is a completely perplexing industry. And you just mentioned like there are a lot of misconceptions, and you had a lot of them when you were starting out. Like, if you wouldn't mind, what are some that you think, what are some publishing myths, I guess, that you encounter, especially among maybe writers you've worked with? And then as an agent, how do you work to sort of offer a counterpoint?
I mean, I always try to narrate as I go. And I'm always aware, though, that I'm probably forgetting something. I mean, even when I was writing my book, I thought, oh my God, my writers are going to read this and they're going to be mad I didn't explain this stuff that I've explained in this book to them at some point in the process. I think with nonfiction in particular, two number one things that I think you have to know, which you probably know at this point if you're my client, but if you're not already acculturated into being a professional writer, you might not. The first is that nonfiction is almost always sold on proposal. So I meet a lot of writers who have put in all this work into writing a book that frankly they didn't need to write. And that's also why I wanted to write a book about nonfiction, publishing in particular, because nothing I saw out there that was particular to publishing was about nonfiction. So there was no one saying, okay, you know what? You got to write a book proposal. This is what it looks like. Here's what it contains. The other is I get pitched books all the time from people who want to write their first nonfiction book, but they haven't written anything previously, or they don't have a very identifiable professional accomplishment that could say to a publisher, I should take you seriously. And I'm not here to destroy anyone's dreams, but getting a book deal is the biggest job you can get as a writer. A publisher is investing money in you through an advance. And that's another thing that isn't always understood, is how advances work, which I'm happy to discuss. And it's very hard to get that kind of investment from a publisher unless you have either writing accomplishments or professional accomplishments to show. And I try to get pretty granular in the book about how to make your accomplishments really legible to publishers. Otherwise, they're not going to say, hey, here's a bunch of money to go off and write a book. Like, I'm selling on a proposal.
I really appreciated that section of your book where you're talking about advising clients to pitch and publish.
Yeah.
And I think the word you use is aggressively as you can stand to, with as much, I think, tolerance for rejection as you can possibly build up. I teach writing workshops, and I used to work as an editor. I published a lot of writers. So I'm a big believer also in getting short form work out there.
Yeah.
But also as a writer, and a writer who's written memoir, I'm so grateful. Like, it wasn't possible, as you're saying, but even if I had tried to just jump into writing the book first without a lot of bylines, I wouldn't have known what publishing was like. I wouldn't have known what it's like to put very personal work out there for public consumption and get feedback from readers. So another thing I always tell my students is, like, it's good to pitch and have that publishing experience before you actually have a whole book out.
Yeah, I would guess too, it's proof of concept for publishers, but also proof of concept for you. You get to know what works, what doesn't, what feels good. With something as personal as your writing, you're learning how much you want to reveal, how comfortable you feel revealing it, what people are interested in based on their response. There's no downside. And one of the things that I've learned in encouraging writers to pitch is they feel self-conscious going back to the same well. Like, someone didn't respond to them, so therefore, like, I just can't email them again. My guess is that if you're on the editor side, it doesn't even register. You're like, yeah.
It depends. Sometimes, I mean, I was a literary editor. It's very different than working at
Mm.
like a big media company.
Yeah.
But I will say you don't remember every pitch,
Yeah.
but even if you do, it's good. I mean, I
Yeah.
think we're used to being pitched a lot
Right.
and pitched a few times before saying yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see a downside either
Yeah.
necessarily. Yeah. I hear from some people they're concerned about like almost spoiling the book or
Yes.
like putting too much. Do you feel like you can put too much out before a book?
No, I mean, again, the answer is always it depends. I have this interview in the book with another agent, the agent I really admire named Brittany Bloom, who's a really great memoir agent. She reps Strangers, which is this currently this huge best-selling memoir. She repped Crying in H Mart, and she repped Wild Game. So 3 huge best-selling memoirs. And I asked her this question about giving too much away. And she had this really funny answer. And she said, in the beginning of Romeo and Juliet, it tells you exactly what's going to happen. She's like, I don't believe in the giving it too much away theory. Like, I've never found it to be a problem. And I think that's true. But I also think it's a question for you to think about if you're writing memoir or writing anything, really. If you can give it all away in 6,000 to 10,000 words, it's not a book. It's an article. And that's fine.
Yeah.
Articles are important.
That leads me to another question, which is another one I get a lot, I think, from students. It's just, how do I know it is a book versus like a long essay or a series of essays? Is there, or, on the reported nonfiction side, how do I know this is a book and not a series of articles?
Yeah.
Do you have like general, I don't know,
Yeah.
criteria you give?
I do. I have a
writers?
couple things to think about. The first is like a stress test question, which is, I call it like the page 200 problem. How are you going to get the reader to page 200? Not how you are going to do it too, but what are you going to do to keep the reader's attention for that whole long time? The other thing is, if you've already written about something, do you find that you're still thinking about it? Are you still playing with the idea? You can't put it down. It won't leave you. So many of the writers that I've interviewed, that's what they talk about, the sense that I did the X and it wasn't enough. And finally, the question of, if somebody else wrote this, would I be really upset? Am I uniquely the person to write this book? Like, I'd never really wanted to write a book until I wrote this book. And the second I thought of the idea, I'm like, obviously, I am going to write the book. And I think that was a really good thing to know about myself.
Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit because you mentioned earlier book proposals. And no one I know really likes book proposals. It's an interesting exercise.
I do.
Okay, well.
I am that weirdo.
Okay, so first of all, why
I'm alone.
Why do you think so many people struggle with it? I mean, I have my own thoughts, but I'm curious what you have to say as someone who's seen many more.
Do you feel like you could share your thoughts?
I just think it's a tough needle to thread.
Yeah,
it has
really
to be
is. That's
both
it.
your best writing, like a creative writing flex, and there's this cold, hard marketing business side of it. And it is not automatic for a lot of writers to think of our work in terms of market or
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But I think that where a lot of writers go, if you're going to err on one side, err on it being a great piece of writing.
Right.
And I think a lot of, and I talk about this quite pointedly in the book, where writers fail more is when they lean too hard into the marketing. And my term for this is death by PowerPoint. Like, I know that they Googled book proposals. Most of what you see out there is trash. Another reason I wrote a book, because you see these very formulaic book proposals that have a lot of marketing bullet points, and nobody who gets into publishing wants to do it because they are obsessed with PowerPoint. Like, that's not it. That's not what drives us. So yes, you have to talk about your audience. Yes, you have to talk about the market. Yes, you have to talk about comparative titles. There are ways to do that I think are compelling, that show you can write. But I also think that your number one thing is to make an engaging piece of work. But there is this like meta aspect to book proposals, and it's just not intuitive to most people, which is you're displaying the thing you're showing you know how to do while also arguing for the thing you will write. So you're constantly signposting. You're saying, in this chapter I will, and this part fits into the whole. So you want to constantly, with and it's concise, it's really distilled. So, every sentence counts because it's short, and it all has to serve the purpose of saying why this book matters and show that you're a good writer. It's not an easy task.
Right. Show that you are the person to write it also, and show why this is the moment, which I
Right.
think is challenging. It's just a hard thing to know, especially if you yourself have been interested in a topic for years.
Yeah.
Or like if it's a memoir, you know why you want to write it.
Yeah.
But like what's the relevance to a reader? The proposal's your first chance in a way to think about your book as a reader might
Yes.
encounter it. So I think it's a good exercise for writers, but it's hard.
I think so too. And I think I'm doing this workshop very shortly after this event on memoir proposal. And sometimes memoir is sold with a full manuscript. Sometimes it's sold with a proposal. I actually think it's really helpful for a writer, even if they're going to write a whole memoir, to write a little proposal to themselves, because it's your chance to explain to yourself why you're writing the book, why it matters, who the audience is, how it will be structured. I would say too, for the question of why now, it's really, and I really drill down in this in the book, it's really important to be aware of publishing timelines. They're very different than you might think. They're really attenuated. So if we sell your book on proposal today, it's sold on proposal, you have to write it. You're usually given at least a year. That's assuming you do it on time. A big if in my experience. And then it's about a year until it comes out. So you can't chase headlines because the headlines are happening on a timeline that is much more accelerated than publishing. A couple weeks ago, we got this really good proposal in about Venezuela, and it was very timely, and we all wanted to jump on it. But then we were like, we can't. Like, we don't. It still has to be written, and it's the way it was structured was really paying to the current headlines. And we have no idea what our relationship with Venezuela is going to be like in 3 years when this book comes out. So that's something to be really aware of if you're thinking about a nonfiction book.
With your clients, how often do they come to you with a fully formed like proposal?
Yeah.
And how often are they just like, I have a pile of work, it's good work, you know, and something about it grabs you, obviously, or you wouldn't be talking with them.
Yeah.
And then like, how often are you helping to shape that proposal?
There's a lot of shaping. And I think I'm particularly inclined to work that way. So maybe more than other folks. I also, this is another reason why I started the book with articles and essays. A lot of my clients are people I reached out to. So I read something of theirs and said, I just really like the way you write. I like your voice. And then it becomes a conversation about what the book might be. And sometimes that conversation takes a few years. In other cases, they're referred to me or they come to me with an idea. I would say that if you're thinking about whether or not you're ready for an agent, you're in a much stronger position if you have a fully baked idea and a proposal, unless you're very, very widely published. And you want to put as good of a package together when you're querying agents. Also, I think it's a little different. When I was first starting out, my list wasn't as big. So I was more inclined to say, hey, like, I can work on a lot of fixer-uppers. And now it's different. So if you're at that stage as an emerging writer, it's really worth looking at junior agents, younger agents, because they are more inclined they're really looking to grow their list in a different way than someone who's been at it for 20 years.
Right. You have to think like, do I want or need an agent who is like an editor who will be in there in the weeds, even with like sample material?
Yeah.
Or someone who can like edit the book proposal and kind of whip it into shape? Or am I comfortable doing a lot of that on my own? Having the agent sort of.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very, very editorially involved. But it would be a lot to expect an agent to like solve all your problems, and be like, yeah, I have a bunch of links here. What's the book? Like that's, yeah.
I think so many people starting out reach out to agents thinking that almost like the agent will tell them what the book is or tell them, yes, this is the perfect time in the market for that book.
Yeah.
But agents, please correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
My sense is that you are waiting for you need the writer to tell you what their vision is.
I know. And I think, thank you for saying that.
Of course, just looking out for you, Alia.
Thank you. Especially when I was younger, I would feel bad if I didn't know immediately. But I actually think it's really great when a writer's like, no, this is the book. Like that's actually really galvanizing. Like, no, I know what the book is. And sometimes I know what the book is. And quite often I've worked with writers and they've pitched me a book and I'm like, you think this is the book, but actually we're going to tilt it this way. I'm looking at like Dorothy right now. And like, yeah, our first conversation about our first book was like, you're saying it's this, but it's that. And that happens all the time. But that's a really different conversation again than sending me 6 links and being like, which one of these is a book?
So, like, what are you looking for when you're reading?
Yeah.
You know, you still get queries, I
Yeah,
assume,
yeah.
when you're open. So, like, I know when I was an editor, I was always like, first and foremost, does the voice grab me? Is
Yep.
this a voice I want to spend
Yep.
a lot of time with? Will I follow this writer into like down unexpected paths?
Yeah.
You know, but like, I think for so many of us, it starts there. But you have to also be thinking about, can I sell it?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
what are you? How do you evaluate?
So I do think the word unexpected is really important. And if the unexpected is in the query, even better. I've spent, because of this book tour, I'm doing all these like speed date pitch sessions where like people pitch me and I tell them what's wrong with their pitches. And you see, I see a lot of the same thing, which is I think in the effort to be universally appealing, all the specificity is sanded off. So I get a lot of like, this is a memoir about grief, comma, trauma, comma, and the meaning of like fill in big word. And there's nothing to grab onto. So I want to see something that I can grab onto. I want to see, even in the query, that someone can really write. And I often tell people to look at jacket copy of books that have sold really well to see what a good pitch looks like. And I actually have a specific one because when I was doing all these pitch sessions, I saw so many grief memoirs, and I realized that I had a grief memoir on my shelf that did really well, won the Pulitzer, that we rep, not me personally, but my colleague Chris Paris Lamb, Stay True by Wasu. And if you look at the jacket copy, it's about the death of his best friend. And it just starts out with a description of what that friend was like. It's very surprising. And like why was he was basically like, why was I friends with this person? And it's very clear what the voice is like in the pitch. And you get a specific person. So I love when I see that. In terms of what I think about in terms of the market, so as an agent, of course, I'm thinking about the audience, but I also think about one particular audience, which is book editors. So I'm always thinking, are there 5 to 10 to 15 editors that I can name who would want to buy this? Because that's my market. And I do have to think that. And that's why when it's like super vague, like it's about grief, comma, loss, comma, and the meaning of memory, who's the editor for that?
Okay, so I thought you had a lot of valuable discussion in the book, like about the editorial relationship, which you just mentioned, and like how important it is. I think, I mean, again, former editor, I think it's like the most important thing. And as a writer, I would choose, when I've had the luxury, I've chosen like to work with specific editors.
Yeah,
that's like very important.
I think that's really wise.
Yeah. So can you talk more about that, and also just like the way you explain in this book how the writer is not like a solo shooting star at all. Like you are part of a team of people responsible for bringing this book out into the world. Can you talk about like what happens, when a book is in the pipeline, and how a writer can shift from this sort of, I'm a writer, I'm doing this solitary work, it's going to be great, to like, I am a person on this team, like responsible for this book together.
Yeah.
How
It's a really hard transition. And I actually found it really hard when I became a writer to transition from working on a team, which is what I do all day, to it kind of be, because when you're a writer, it's just you. And I missed having a team. But I think for writers, getting used to having to give up a little bit of control is quite hard. It's like your little thing. So first of all, even if your publicist and your editor and your agent are not perfect, we all want the same thing. And I think it's really important to know that, I think there's some, again, bad advice out there about being an advocate for yourself in the publishing process that imagines that relationship as antagonistic, as if being a squeaky wheel will make for a good experience. You never want to be the person whose email everybody dreads. But also you're allowed to push back on edits, but your editor's interest is to find your book an audience. And that's both in the editing, but also in how they position and market it. And I think it's really important to know that they are deeply experienced in that work. That is their job. And as you go through the whole process of professionalizing as a writer, you're probably going to deal with more than one editor, both for books, but also with publishing essays and articles. And those relationships are really valuable. So one of the things I write about is that this whole process of pitching is in fact finding a reader for your work, be it an editor who's going to help you, an editor who might stay with you, an editor who's going to champion you. And the relation, you're not just looking for a stepping stone to fame and fortune, you're looking for a relationship. And you value it like a relationship, as you would any important relationship in your life.
Absolutely. There are like definitely certain editors I've wanted to go to. This is for short form, where I'm like writing about this feels very vulnerable or even like a little bit scary. I'm going to go to this editor I've worked with like time and time again, who just like I know will get it and will take good care of it and will know when to push back and challenge me and will also like listen when I advocate for myself. And like you're saying, it's just that's invaluable.
Right. And it does, the whole process of being published is finding those people. And at its best, you learn the people that you trust. But don't actually be afraid to trust. A lot of people go in really skeptically, but if you find those relationships, they could last for your whole career.
Absolutely. Okay, another common question I get from writers, and I'm sure you do too.
Gosh.
Sort of like the dreaded platform question.
Oh, the dreaded platform.
Right. It used to be, do I have to be on Twitter to
my
sell
God.
it? But it's thankfully not so much that anymore, partly because of what's happened to the site formerly known as Twitter. I will say, though, like, I think you do a really good job in this book of explaining what a platform is and is not, or like what it can be. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think it's actually really telling that we say it used to be Twitter, because when I sold this book, it was Twitter, and it now not, which shows how mutable all of this is. And if your whole platform is tied to one death site, it's probably flimsy. And that we shouldn't be too obsessed with these social media platforms. So we think that the reductive definition of platform is it's like your number of social media followers. I've sold many books by people who have modest or no social media followings. That said, they do have a proven expertise and perhaps already have a way to reach readers. They have a way of proving that they are the person uniquely qualified to write a book. And they're able to put that into language. So when I talk about platform, I urge people to think about what platform literally means, which is the place from which you speak. So, okay, so I'm going to use Dorothy as an example. Sorry, Dorothy's like, like if you're a teacher and you have the one student you love to point to and call on, that she's here and in the front. So Dorothy is one of my clients. I love her. And she's a professor at Georgetown, and she's one of the foremost experts on taxation, and her particular expertise is on the intersection of race and tax law. Pretty much nobody writes about this but Dorothy. Is Dorothy big on social media? No, she doesn't have to be. She's like the person, though, who knows this, and she does publish on it, and she speaks publicly on it. So that's also part of her platform, that she's able to write a New York Times op-ed. But it took her a really long time to get to the place where like the New York Times would take her pitches. She started out much more humbly than that. And, she's a very illustrious expert, but it's not about her Twitter following.
Okay, here's kind of a tough question. So you hear a lot about publishing being in this weird moment. Although, has it ever not been in a weird moment?
I know, that's why I'm kind of like, eh.
But like, you hear promising projects not selling. You hear something I hear a lot as a memoirist is like how strange the memoir market is right now.
It's really hard right now.
What do you say to people whose work you really believe in, who might be grappling with this question of like, is now the time, or does anyone still want books in my genre, or like what kind of advice do you give?
This is my tough love advice. Which is, what the fuck else are you going to do? Are you just not going to try? Like, you could just not be a writer. Nobody's forcing you. Nobody's forcing you to write that memoir. Nobody's forcing you to research agents who might be interested. You don't have to do it. Don't clog my inbox. But if you really want it, you have to at least try. And the way to try is to research the people who can help make it happen. And also to be a part of supporting work you care about by coming to events like this, supporting independent bookstores, subscribing to literary magazines, sharing books you love online. If you want books to exist, you have to do these things. Or you could just say, it's not for me. So that's my advice. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to sell a book. It's really hard for me to make a living. It's gotten a little harder in the past few years. And sometimes I'm like, am I going to keep this beautiful apartment? But
it's never been easy.
It's never been easy. It's not something you do because it's easy. You do it because you love it. And you believe in it.
Right. I see books sell every week. Why not yours?
Why not yours?
Right.
I'm still selling books on a regular basis by serious writers on serious subjects.
I have a feeling that a lot of you have great questions, so we are going to transition to your questions soon, so be thinking. Be ready. It's almost your moment. I think writing a book always teaches us something, even
my
as
God.
much as you know about publishing. No, I'm so curious.
So true.
Like, something you learned about yourself while working on this.
I don't like writing books.
So you can dish it out. No, I'm kidding.
No. No, that's kind of why I'm like, you should only do it if you really want to do it. I really knew what the book was, and I really knew I wanted to write it. And it's really hard. I have some really particular craft advice that I learned, which I could share. It took me a really long time so I sold my book with a proposal and a sample chapter. The sample chapter was a chapter on pitching articles and essays. And that's something I had a lot of experience in. So it was like pretty easy to write. And the next chapter in the order of the book was on education. And it was on MFA programs in J schools, which I don't know a lot about. And I struggled for 6 months. I couldn't write it. And then one day I woke up and I was like, I have 6 months in this book contract. I haven't written a thing. What am I going to do? So I decided to write the chapter actually that I read aloud. That was the next chapter I wrote. I'm like, what chapter would be the most fun to write? And then I wrote my book in the order of most fun to least fun chapter.
Wow, that's a new one to me.
And it changed my life. Because by the time I got to least fun, I'd written all the other chapters. I had confidence in myself. The finish line was in sight. And I knew I could do it because I'd written all the fun chapters. And that was like, yeah, my next book is going to be called Most Fun to Least Fun. Okay.
That's great. People, you can start sort of standing up and moving to the microphone if you have questions, because we're going to start those right now. My last question is just, do you think writing this changed your relationship to like your career, like agenting and how you work with writers? Has it changed?
I hope that it's made me, I hope I've always been empathetic. I hope it's made me more empathetic. And I think even if only that comes from it, it was worth it. It's really hard to write a book, and I just have so much more respect. I mean, I always respected them. Like, they're such like beautiful, crazy weirdos, my writers. But now, like, they do it more than once. Like, what is wrong with those people?
As you say, what else are we gonna do?
What else are they gonna do?
Right. Okay. All right, audience questions. Does anyone want to step up and go first?
Hi.
Hi, Alia.
Hi, what's your name?
Daniel.
Daniel. Hi, Daniel.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here and having part of the event, and thank you to Politics and Prose. First off, super nervous, but I'm an aspiring writer, or not aspiring. I've written a book, and I have been pitching it, querying it, whatever you want to say, for about 1.5 years now. It is a literary memoir of sorts, and I'm having a difficult time trying to get a sense that, from my perspective, it's a lot of informed by my real life, but in a fiction component, and I know this is a nonfiction event. Do you have any advice for how to take the feedback or even the non-feedback you get from agents who just give you the form letters and really reading into that to make your product better or your pitches better?
Well, let's start with the non-feedback.
Yeah.
Don't think about the non-feedback. Okay. Like, the non-feedback is like, if you're like internet dating, the people who like don't get, like, the people that don't get back to you, like, just pretend they don't exist.
Okay.
They're not real.
Okay.
And just check them off your list. I think that it's really hard if something blends fiction and nonfiction. Like, I would say, without knowing what your book is, you need to be really crystal clear about that.
Okay.
And then in terms of the feedback, I mean, a lot of it is gut. Like, does this feedback sound to you like, oh, I just am taking this in because somebody, negged me and therefore I should take it seriously? Or, oh, when you get feedback and you're like, I can't stop thinking about it because I know it's true.
Yeah.
That's the feedback to listen to.
I appreciate it.
And I get feedback like that too, where like the reason I'm upset is I know it's true. And it's probably not going to be most of the feedback you get, but it might be one or two things, and then sit with that.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And I will be querying you.
Thank you. Dan Coys.
Hey,
Celebrity Dan Coys.
big fan. Can you talk a little bit about how the relationship between the author and the publisher works on stuff that is like so important to the author, but they have no expertise in it? Like, this microphone is not working well. Like, for example, a book jacket. Authors really care about those. They are not designers usually, and they don't know anything. How do you,
That's
as
a
an agent,
really hard
manage
one.
that relationship and that conversation?
That's one of the hardest parts of my job, because everything is important to you. And most things you are not an expert in other than the actual writing of your book. So I actually think this is why it's really great to have an agent. If it's hard for an agent to say, especially agents who are earlier in their careers, now I like whatever, I'll just tell you whatever I think, but for an agent to say, Dan, you're overreacting. But I think it's actually okay to ask your agent, how big of a deal is this? I also think it's really important to keep your powder dry. And the earlier you start pushing back on things in the publishing process, the more, okay, now is the powder wet? Is the powder diminishing? Whatever. Like, you only have so much powder. So like, you're like, oh, really early, I don't like this. And then like 2 weeks later, I don't like this. Maybe wait, because there's going to be stuff you're not happy about, and you only have so much powder. And that's also why you should feel comfortable going to your agent and saying, is this worth it? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. I actually think jackets are really important. They're so important that a jacket, like, I'll fight really hard for. But there's other stuff where just really, like, there's no need for 10 emails. Like, it's everybody mad to write 10 emails to, alleviate your anxiety. Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. My name's Helen.
Hi, Helen.
Hi. I am also very nervous, but I'm returning to nonfiction writing after like a 5-year break or so. And I have a question about building your sort of platform in the early stages of your career, because I have a lot of different interests. And I know there's this value of like expertise. And if you have like an academic career, it's perhaps easier to translate that into nonfiction work. But what if you're somebody who has a lot of different interests and has a career that's not necessarily applicable?
So I'm going to give you, I quote in my book, my writer Hanif Abdurraqib, and he talks about, instead of interest, he talks about obsessions. And he talks about, I'm going to not remember exactly what they are, but the Johnny Cash 3, which was God, murder, and I think love. And like, those aren't interests, those are obsessions. And, Hanif has his own obsessions. Like, the 3 things he's always, and it's not like a topic. It's like from some other place. So I would say, like, what are your obsessions? Like, you have these interests, but surely there are things that you come back to again and again, questions you ask again and again as a writer, as a person. And that's the place from which you can build your expertise. And it's also a really good place to write a book from, because it's not just like, I really like turtles, and I also like, Antarctica, and I also like wrote about, the pioneers. It's like, oh, what's like the gut questions I have to ask? And maybe if you orient yourself around that, you'll get to a deeper place of expertise. Yeah, if you're gonna like write a country song about yourself, what would your obsessions be?
That's great. I like that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Shall we call it?
Yeah, that's good.
We're good. Thank you guys so much
Thank
for
you.
coming. I see so many friends in the audience. I really appreciate you all.
Thank you so much. Copies of the book are behind the cash register. The signing line will start right where I am standing. And if you could please help us by folding up your chair and leaning against the surface. Yeah, I don't know what happened to this.
Yeah. And so it was just the easiest position because I could stay on my agency, but like just know, like I followed your career, and if Maria ever retires, I'm calling you. You did not turn me down. I didn't turn you down. It was just, I was like, Aaliyah, what should I even be doing?